I am Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser. I think we have at least one microphone working, and we have three of my colleagues. Nick Brown from Washington. Ann Lopez from Hawaii. And Aaron Ford from Nevada. We have a second mic working. How about that? I'm going to start off just with a few framing remarks. Then I'm going to give each of my colleagues the same opportunity. We've got a number of people who reached out with testimonials that we need to hear tonight. We got a lot of questions. I'm going to try to go through them. And with any luck, there'll be time at the end for an open mic opportunity. We've got 2 hours and a lot to cover. I want to thank you all for coming. I often say our democracy is not a spectator sport. It's a team sport. Thank you all for being on the field. I want to thank some members of law enforcement here with us tonight, helping keep us all safe. And my entire staff who worked very hard to make this happen. The principle that will be a through line from a lot of what we're going to talk about is in America, nobody is above the law. In America, we live under the rule of law and not the rule of whim. We right now are getting a chance to learn why due process of law matters. It matters because we won't tolerate people who are here being picked up without any process and shipped to some other country with no recourse. The First Amendment matters because when you speak and you speak your truth, you cannot be, in this country, retaliated against for speaking your truth. We also believe in the separation of powers, which means Congress passes the law, the president executes the law. And for me, I grew up appreciating the freedoms, the opportunities that this country stands for. As many of you know, close to 80 years ago to the day, April 13th, 1945, my grandmother gave birth to my mom in a Nazi concentration camp. 1 week later, the U.S. Army liberated my mom, my grandmother, and they decided to go to the United States of America because they believe in the values of this nation. And in my family, from that concentration camp to me standing here as your Attorney General, having worked for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Byron White, and President Barack Obama, is one generation. That's an only in America story. And the question we're going to talk about today is whether or not we keep America, America. In America, when there's money allocated to help public health so that we don't have a huge measles outbreak, or to help behavioral health so young people struggling get the support. That's $220 million to Colorado from Congress. Tomorrow, Colorado's in court leading a multi-state coalition to fight for this funds and to fight for all of you. It means when on the first day of this presidency, the president tried to overrule the 14th Amendment's protection of birthright citizenship with a Sharpie, we went to court, and we now have a preliminary injunction stopping that from happening. And it means when I heard from many of you, parents of trans kids, about a cruel order that would prevent health care from those who need it, stopping access to gender-affirming care, with Nick Brown's leadership in Washington, we went to court, and we're victorious in that case too. In Colorado, we've got a gold standard for elections. We do it our way. We've been a pioneer for the nation when this president tried to tell us how to conduct elections in ways that would have made them less reliable, less participatory. With the leadership, not sure what happened there. We'll try that one more time. Leadership of Aaron Ford, we went to court. We're going to win that case too. I want to close on a point that I know is on everyone's mind. We're going to get to it. Will this democratic republic hold? Because these court victories are important. But more important is everyone's voice. A few weeks ago, I was at a rally of 8,000 people at our Capitol. There'll be another one this Saturday. We need to use our voice. Benjamin Franklin left the Constitutional Convention, was asked, what type of government do you have? His answer, a republic, if you can keep it. Abraham Lincoln's answer, what type of government we have? It's a government of the people, by the people. Say this last one with me, for the people. The reason we're having this critical conversation about America is so that we keep America. We keep America a land of e pluribus unum. Out of many, we are one. Together, we stand strong. We stand on our principles. We fight for our principles. And we remember the great Thurgood Marshall, who had the following to say: we cannot play ostrich. Democracy cannot flourish amid fear. Liberty cannot bloom amongst hate. Justice cannot take root amid rage. And America needs to get to work. America can do better. America will do better, because in America, we have no choice but to do better. Thank you. All right, I'm going to hand the microphone down to hear from our other guest, A.G. Brown.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is participatory. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Brown. I have the honor of being the Attorney General for the great state of Washington. I want to thank you first and foremost for being here and showing up, and thank you to your outstanding Attorney General for inviting all of us to be here. This is actually my first time in Denver. I live in Seattle, and I think of you all as a sister city, and I'm ashamed that I haven't been here before, but I cannot think of a better opportunity to spend a couple hours with you talking about the issues that are getting at the core of who we are as a country and as people. And I want to just highlight a few things before I pass the mic to my colleagues. You know, in this turmoil of change, action, of unjust by the President in the United States, it is sad that so much of our effort is protecting America from the President of the United States. Let me say that again. So much of our job is protecting America from the President of the United States. But I am so proud to be in this space, in this office, working with these people and our colleagues across the country, because our efforts are so needed right now because of so many things that A.G. Weiser was highlighting. But I also want to remind people, as we see this flood of executive orders and actions, that what the President has done thus far is not passing new laws, is not changing new statutes, or not even orders by the Supreme Court of the United States. None of the executive orders are laws. And that's a reminder that I think we all need to take, because they are scary, they're having tremendous impacts. but none of those are laws, and none of those are impacting the laws in Colorado or Washington or Hawaii or Nevada. Not a single action by the president has changed your constitution, the statutes that your representative have passed, and the victories that Phil and his team have won on your behalf. So I want to just cherish and hold on to the fact that there are many protections here in Colorado and in our states that continue to defend your rights. So that's first and foremost. The laws have not changed simply because we have an unjust and unlawful president taking these actions. Number two, although so much of what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. draws our time, attention, and our fear, I do think that the vast majority of things that you and I think about in our day-to-day lives, that those are happening at the state level and at a local level. The things that you all wake up and worry about on a day-to-day basis, the quality of your children's education, the health care, public safety, taxes, transportation, the things that we all worry about as residents of our states, most of those issues are being decided at your state capitol or your city council and your county governments. And I don't want us to lose focus of that, because we will fight against these unjust actions from the presidency, but we also need to pay a lot of attention to what's happening at our state and local level, where you all in the community can have such an impact on what happens, and your voice can echo at a larger way than it can in Washington, D.C. And lastly, the work that we're doing, which I am tremendously proud of, each and every case has relied on you. It's relied on citizens, it has relied on residents of our states, it has relied on advocacy groups, it has relied on the bravery and the tenacity of individuals. You know, when we led on birthright citizenship, we could talk about the impact on our states. When we fought against the illegal actions to cut NIH funding, we could talk about the impact in our states. When we led on fighting for transgender health care in Washington, we could tell the impact on individuals in our states. So we need to continue to hear from all of you, which is why it's so important that we're doing these town halls, to hear from people, so we understand the work that we can do, because we have ideas, but we all work for you. So continue to show up today and the next days and let us know how we can best represent you. And thank you again for having us.
And policies are doing every single day to Americans all over the United States, then we're not going to win. And so these stories here, these opportunities to share our experiences, I think are crucial for our ability to continue to win. And we have been winning every day up until today, and we will continue. But it's these stories that are going to be really the crux of what we can do. I think there's also another important reason for doing it, and that's that we have to share these stories with each other. This is not going to be an easy 4 years, and as family, friends, community members, we need to understand what each of us is going through. We're going to have to work harder than ever to help each other, to be present for somebody else when they experience whatever the pain is for them. And so I appreciate everybody sharing these stories for that reason as well. So finally, I left Colorado in 1993. It was landlocked, and the altitude is really high. So I moved to Hawaii. But before I left, Colorado won a really important battle. I don't know if those of you remember, in 1992, Amendment 2 was a ballot measure. It was a measure to allow municipalities to discriminate in employment and housing based on sexual orientation. That was not an issue just for those of us in the LGBTQ community. It was an issue for all of Colorado, and Colorado won. I still have a button from that time. I tried to find it, but I couldn't. But it said, unconstitutional, unconscionable, un-Colorado. And those words are as strong today as they were 33 years ago. So I feel confident that we will continue this work and we will win together. So thank you very much.
Well, I am as eloquent as my colleagues, and so I got to pull out the iPad and read the speech. But hi, everybody. My name is Aaron Ford. I am the Attorney General from Nevada. How y'all doing tonight? You know, Ann, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate the work you're putting in. Ann is a fighter. She's leading from the time zone that is furthest west of us all. I'm trying to take a nap, and she waking me up with text messages and stuff. But thank you so much for your work, and you are such a leader among us all, and thank you so much for traveling here to be with us today. And Nick Brown, a good buddy of mine, thank you so much, sir, for the work you've done. Nick came onto the scene 4 months ago, and has taken the scene by storm, unafraid to represent the residents of his state in any way that he deems necessary. And so thank you so much, Nick, for doing that, standing up for your folks. And let me say this about this man on my left. I said this earlier. We had a media availability, and I bragged on him, and I mean 100% of it. I don't know if Colorado recognizes how much of a jewel you have in Phil Weiser. I didn't even have to ask you to give it up, because I was going to ask you to give it up. The man is brilliant. He is a leader. He embraces the notion of constitutionality across every single aspect you can contemplate. He's a great representative of you all. We pledged together, we like to say, because we got elected in 2018 together, and I'm so proud to set or say with you, sir. Give it up to him again, y'all. So, look, I am the Attorney General from Nevada, and delighted to be here. This is not an easy time for us these days. I was telling someone earlier, I sleep real good at night, not only because I'm exhausted, but because I know we are doing God's work. We as attorneys general are putting in the work to represent the constituencies of our respective states, and we're doing it unabashedly. I don't speak for them, but I suspect some of us among the 23 are afraid. Some of us are afraid of the attacks that we are getting or will be getting, and nonetheless, we are overcoming that fear with bravery. Some of us are unafraid, and we're just doing it anyway. But it is important to know that this is not an easy job, and so again, I want to thank my 3 colleagues for being here, and I get asked all the time, why do I do it? Why do I continue to do it? Because this ain't an easy job. And so, you know, a lot of people ask me that, and in fact, some suggest that I should stop doing this, right? That I should stop doing it, especially because in this current political climate, if I want to be governor of Nevada, and I will be one day, that I should stop doing that. They question why I keep standing up and speaking out overtly in support of, for example, our immigrant community. They ask why I continue to speak up and defend the rights of the LGBTQ plus community. They ask why do I argue so fervently in support of diversity, in support of equity, in support of inclusion, and in support of those who are pejoratively said to have achieved their accomplishments as a result of DEI policies. And they wonder why I would stand up during this day and age and let some put a target on my back, all in the name of supporting things that some would say are contrary to public opinion. Well, frankly, the answer is based on the fruit principles. You've heard my colleagues say some of them. For example, I happen to believe in the Constitution. Period, point blank. It amazes me that some who claim to be such strict constructionists have problems with reminding people every day that they have constitutional rights in this country. And it's my job as Attorney General to represent the entirety of my state, the state of Nevada, as it is for my colleagues represent their respective states. So it's my job to remind them they have constitutional rights worth protecting, and yes, that includes, indeed, undocumented members of the immigrant community. And yes, that includes members of the LGBTQ plus community. And yes, that includes those who are transgendered. Now listen, another reason why I do this, frankly, Phil, at the Office of Attorney General, I've said it before, that our job is justice. I've said that time and time again. Since day 2 on my job in the office, I introduced myself to folks. Day 1 was like crudité and crumpets and stuff, but day 2 on the job, I introduced myself and I said our job is justice, and that includes enforcing civil and constitutional rights. But you know, where I really got this idea from comes from this book I grew up on. Now look, I understand I'm probably in a diverse audience, and many religions are represented here. My man Phil would appreciate what I'm about to say, though, because there's a lot of overlap in what we're talking about in this American mosaic. You see, in the Bible, it told me early on in Deuteronomy 16 and 20 that justice you shall pursue. That's what it says, Phil. And in Micah 6 and 8, both the question asked and the answer given is very explicit. It says, what does the Lord require of you? It says to act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. But you and we all know that justice isn't always served equitably, and we know certainly that folks don't show a lot of mercy these days. But for me, these scriptures, in my mind, they're called to action. It's a mandate. And so when you move over there in Isaiah, it tells me to defend the oppressed. Y'all understand where I'm going with this? It tells me I'm supposed to defend the oppressed. I'm supposed to take up the cause of the fatherless. I'm supposed to plead the cause of the widow. And you know what it says about immigrants? It says, don't oppress a foreigner. It says, you yourselves used to be foreigners, and so don't oppress them. In the New Testament, in red print, that means Jesus said it, in red print, it says, for what you do to the least of these, you do unto me. That's what it says. So this is what guides me, y'all. It tells me I'm supposed to advocate for everybody, especially those who can't fight for themselves, wherever that fight occurs. It means that I'm supposed to treat everybody, and I mean everybody, with humanity, with dignity, and respect. It means that I'm supposed to stand up for the most vulnerable in our society. I'm not supposed to swing down on people. I'm not supposed to alienate them. I'm not supposed to treat them as second-class humans, or worse than that, treat them as subhuman. And so many folks in our society right now are trying to do that. But guess what? The Constitution doesn't allow it. And so that's why we stand up, and we stand up for the rights of everybody, constitutionally and otherwise. And as long as I'm the Attorney General from Nevada, we're going to continue to stand up for that. And I'm proud to stand aside these 3 colleagues and I should be doing math, 19 others who will continue to be. Y'all cut me off? Is that what y'all doing? Y'all cutting me off? Anyway, I'm almost done. Anyway, I'm happy to be here with everybody. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you so much for having me. Phil, back to you.
Now you can see how lucky I am to get to work with such colleagues. We're right on schedule, and we have got a very important part of this program. A number of people are about to refuse to be silenced, who have faced indignities, illegal conduct, and real threats to their work, and they're going to share their words. First one from the Village Exchange Center, rightly celebrated. Amanda Blayrock is someone who's serving thousands of people who are, as Aaron Ford put it, the vulnerable. And I want to hear
Countries of origin, offering culturally appropriate food, hygiene products, health resources, and comprehensive wraparound services with the goal of enhancing stability and integration into the community. In addition to the executive orders having tremendous impact on the communities we serve, causing fear, chaos, uncertainty, and trauma through raids in the surrounding areas of the Village Exchange Center and the homes of our community members, the decisions made regarding federal funding have deeply impacted our programs, our team, and our ability to serve. In the last 2 months, VEC's entire existence has come into jeopardy due to the onslaught of executive orders that both render the majority of our VEC communities quote-unquote unlawful and simultaneously seek to terminate and claw back our funding. Specifically, the executive order protecting the American people against invasion, Section 19, put an estimated $5 million in active federal funding at risk of being lost for us. The currently impacted programs include the following. Our food pantry just lost $2.1 million in FEMA SSP money through a termination of our contract and $200,000 from the City and County of Denver, who received similar stop work orders. This loss impacts thousands of lives that rely on us to provide culturally appropriate food, hygiene products, diapers, cultural navigation. Our health equity programs have about $1 million at risk through our contracts with Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and Adams County. Most recently, we received a stop work order from the state, which was reversed a week later due to the great work of AG Weiser and all of you. Yes, thank you. To receive a temporary restraining order on the loss of U.S. HHS funding. Lastly, we have congressional directed funding contracted at $1.7 million from HUD to update our community center with critical improvements and a commissary. This was a church from 1940s that needs everything from, stabilizing the ground to fire enhancements. And almost $200,000 from USDA, NIFA, and Office of Refugee Settlement directly from the federal government that support our farm at Stanley Marketplace, where we train refugees and immigrants to learn how to farm through an urban farm immersion program and grow critical produce that 50% of which that's grown goes into our food pantry, serving 4,000 people a week. In response to all of this, we are in a hiring freeze for all federally funded programs and are working with our board of directors to create new financial projections and budgets and scaling down all affected programs. We deeply appreciate all the work of the Attorney General Coalition has done to fight these slashes to funding critical programs like ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we want to hear from Carolyn Wolfram, who I believe is a teacher and has some words to share with us.
Hello, and thank you for listening. I first wanted to say that I'll be talking about education tonight, but I did want to touch on the fact that these federal changes are affecting just about every area of my life. I have a husband who works at the National Renewable Energy Lab and who I joke only ever has one mood, which is a good one, but at the moment he's absolutely frantic with all these potential cuts coming. I have a trans son who is very concerned for his well-being, and I have a daughter who's actually moving to Wales next year because these elections were just too much. I'm on the board of our local fire department. Much of last night's meeting dealt with the real fears we have about not being able to provide life-saving services as a result of the loss of federal funding. I wanted to elaborate, though, on education and start by saying that many of us in this room are parents and know that parenting can be hard on a good day. The parents I work with have all the challenges of parenting, but added on to those challenges are the challenges that come with having a child with a hearing difference. It means that when their babies are born, they work through enormous grief and in many cases guilt, because there's so much unknown about how the hearing difference will affect their child's life. It means hoping they don't eat their very expensive hearing aids when they are 2, and hoping they don't throw those same hearing aids in the garbage or down the toilet when they're 4. When they turn 6, it's hoping they have enough self-advocacy skills to do well academically and socially. In middle school, it's worrying about trying to get them to see the importance of wearing their hearing aids, even though the very thing that connects them with family and friends makes them feel different and like an outsider. It's worrying that as they graduate high school, whether or not they will be able to get through college and career and become productive, happy members of society. It is all these reasons that make it very heartbreaking for me to have to field questions from parents who are worried about whether or not their children will continue to receive services with all these Department of Education cuts. I personally had an epiphany last month after reading about former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's report that loneliness causes significant mental and physical issues, that my job as a teacher of the deaf saves lives, and I don't see this as hyperbole. The very reason I work is to make sure my students enjoy all the connections in life that lead to fulfillment and happiness that any typical hearing child does. It's not an exaggeration to say that the grief I feel as a result of this Department of Education cuts can be compared to the grief any of us feel when we lose something or someone close and dear to us. I am kind of worried about my own job, but for many reasons I'll be okay. I just hate that all these parents who have so much to deal with now even have to think about that losing services for their child is a possibility. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you've done, and I just hope you remember those parents as you continue to do your great work. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Jake Wilson up next from the Gathering Place, wanting to talk about how some of these policies have had real impacts on transgender and non-binary individuals in the LGBTQ community.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming from our community just to engage in this process. So my name is Jake Wilson. I work at The Gathering Place, a Denver-based homeless service provider dedicated to creating pathways to housing and stability. Even before the current administration, there are many barriers to accessing housing. Consider Carolina. She's a mom with 3 kids, living in her car because she fled an abusive partner. Even with us working nonstop to remove the financial and logistical barriers, it still took us 6 months for her and her kids to be housed. But if she came in today, under the directives from HUD and the federal government, would have to tell her that housing is no longer her first priority. That's because the Trump administration is replacing the housing first with housing fourth. Housing first is an evidence-based approach that places stable, permanent housing as the essential first step in recovery. And this has been fundamental at our organization in helping house thousands of individuals over the years. Under the Trump administration, so-called housing fourth approach, housing has been twisted into a reward dispensed only after individuals go through punitive conditions that criminalize poverty. This dangerous shift not only undermines decades of research and compassionate care, but it threatens to dismantle the very foundation that helps families find stability. Now let me tell you another story about Evie. Evie is one of our transgender members, a resident at our micro-community shelter just a few blocks from A.G. Weiser's office. Before coming to the Gathering Place, Evie had bounced around from a number of shelters. These shelters were traditional with binary assumptions, and often Evie experienced high degrees of sexual harassment and violence. At the Gathering Place, we were able to provide a gender-diverse shelter that is creating a safe haven for members of that community to both receive gender-affirming care as well as a sense of belonging. The federal government is creating policies that deny the identities of transgender and non-binary individuals to erode access to life-saving services. By attacking these initiatives, the federal government is eliminating the last lifeline for many of these people. Additionally, ICE has been targeting Denver homeless shelters and resource centers. The relentless presence of ICE at local shelters has instilled fear in our community. Families are terrified to seek help. Making something as simple as picking up formula at our site can feel like choosing between risking their own safety or providing for their infants. Simultaneously, attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts have made funders and companies hesitant to support organizations like The Gathering Place. Hesitant not because of their budget or hesitant because of their consumers or the free market, but hesitant because they're afraid of retaliation from the federal government. We witness these policies create devastation among our community. So I urge all of you to please keep standing up against these harmful federal actions and protect the rights, dignity, and future of our community. Thank you.
I think Ola is going to be next.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Ola Kukoi. I'm the founder and the executive director for Good Shepherd Organization. Good Shepherd Organization is an organization that was founded to cater for the welfare of immigrants and refugees. I'm an immigrant myself, before now I did what? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to quickly go over what I said. I said, my name is Ola Kukoi. I'm the founder and executive director of Good Shepherd Organization. This is an organization that caters for the welfare of immigrants and refugees, helping them to successfully integrate into the American society so that they can really contribute to this our great country. Thank you. So the question, before I read the question, I have this statement I want to make. And the statement is, there are growing concerns about immigration enforcement that raise serious constitutional issues. For example, students have faced deportation over free speech. And currently, a legally present individual from El Salvador was wrongfully deported despite a Supreme Court ruling in his favor. The DOJ's refusal to act has deepened what appears to be a constitutional crisis. And I want to add there too that it's not just a constitutional crisis here, there is also what you call fundamental human rights. The UN Declaration of Fundamental Human Rights is being violated by this current administration. That immigrants that looks like me can be kidnapped and even having their car windows broken into and taken out forcefully. And before you know it, they are being deported. Their parents, their family don't know where they are. They end up in El Salvador. Whether they are from that country or not does not matter. What we are seeing right now is what we will see as the Holocaust happening to immigrants. And the immigrant community is very, very worried. They are very, very scared. I, for one, I came here more than 22 years ago because like every immigrant, I was seeking for security. I was seeking for opportunities for myself and my family. But now we are looking back and we are telling ourselves, did we make a mistake? What happened to the America that we know? And that is why I would like to know what steps do you have put in place to make sure that these issues are not only addressed, but are put front and center so that people know their rights and how to fight for it. Thank you very much.
We were going to save the questions for later, but that's a compelling one. Anyone want to take that one? I'll give my thoughts.
Well, thank you. An earlier commentator thanked us for leading with fearlessness and courage, and I want to correct that. I have fear. I have fear that we're doing the right work. I have fear that we're doing enough work. I have fear for my own safety and for my family's safety in this moment where we are all being attacked. But none of my own fears get to what you're talking about. I'm not worried about somebody snatching me off the street right now. And so many people in this state and all across this country are, and they should be. And I think we need to pause for a moment just to recognize that reality, that so many of our friends and neighbors and people that we don't know are walking around not sure if they're going to come home. And what I will say is that there is a role for us to play, for us as attorney generals to play. And I am so proud of the work that we have done thus far. You know, the first lawsuit that we all brought was around birthright citizenship. I'm so proud being from Washington State. We led the first challenge in 2017, stopping the Trump Muslim ban at a time where other states were not engaged quite yet. But that is only a piece of the work that we need to be doing. The federal government for generations has been doing immigration work. The manner in which they are blatantly ignoring the US Constitution and lying, I know we know this, we know the president lies. We don't say it enough though. The president and the vice president and his chief advisor, Stephen Miller, and Marco Rubio and Kristen Noem, they lie repeatedly. They lied in the Oval Office yesterday or day before when they talked about the Supreme Court decision, saying it was a tremendous victory for them, a 9-0 decision in their favor. It was a lie. And we need to say that because it is incumbent upon us to not get used to it, even though we know it's going to happen. And so I will never pretend to have all the answers, nor is government ever supposed to be the solution for all these challenges. We will continue to bring cases where states can act. We will continue to support the advocacy groups in our community. We will continue to tell the truth. But I think it's also incumbent upon us to support organizations like yours and to show up for people even if we don't know them, and to be supportive of the organizations that are protecting the people that don't have voices. Because if you are an undocumented person in this country right now, it is not in your best interest to speak up, to show up at rallies, to fight the fight that you are worried about. And so those of us that have greater safety in our communities need to fill that void as well.
Kim Sayers-Fay, I think you're next. Kim is not here. Is Corey Moore here?
Got a fan club. Woo. Okay, let me pull up my notes. I am pretty much going to read this one verbatim because we got permission to be a little participatory, and I really want you to participate. So if you hear something that I'm saying that you agree with, just hoop and holler. All right. My name's Corey Moore Luther. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to share my thoughts regarding the illegal actions of this current administration and the impacts on community. Over 15,000 miles since November, we began our care and crisis response the week of the election. Equipped with decades of professional training and experience in preparation, response, and recovery during national and international crisis, everything in me knew whatever was on the horizon would be devastating for everybody, especially our most undervalued neighbors. I began listening and driving. Colorado, 5 visits. New Mexico, 4. Utah, 3. Texas, 3. Wyoming, 2. Arizona, Louisiana, Alabama, Missouri, Kansas, Idaho, Oregon, Montana, Michigan. Over 15,000 miles since November. Imagine a surge in unhoused LGBTQ+ adults and youth seeking safe shelter. Picture highway systems lined with mobile campers seeking affordable housing. Consider the children of migrants attempting suicide for fear of deportation. New graduates without job prospects. the small business owner who depends on international collaboration not defended, defeated. Neighbors, friends, community, these are real stories happening today, and the list of examples of harmful impact will be endless. The past decade, endless. The past decade, I have been a part of a large network of public health and healthcare specialists across the globe dedicated to achieving health for all our community members. When evaluating states like Texas, we see a legislative barrage that undermines communities, specifically transgender and gender expansive priorities of housing, employment, and mental health, while fostering an environment of discrimination and harassment. This current federal administration has clearly emboldened a white nationalist agenda. I'm going to say that again, because that's an intense thing to get a clap for. This current federal administration has clearly emboldened a white nationalist agenda and hate-fueled bills designed to dramatically decrease basic human rights for millions. These hate-fueled bills have already instigated a mass migration to states and countries committed to protecting basic human rights. I am open to offering you a more detailed summary of our preliminary community impact assessment based on this short window of time and limited resources, but in summary, our position follows. Provided on an impact scale of 1 being mild, 2 moderate, 3 extreme, the global community impact extreme. The North American community impact extreme. United States of America community impact extreme. State and jurisdiction and territorial community impact extreme. Community and neighborhood community impact extreme. Economic and employment impact extreme. Housing impact extreme. And mental health impact extreme. My professional public health expertise leads me to clearly define the illegal actions of the current administration as extremely impactful to our collective health, both in the short and the long term. I ask you to hold the executive branch of our federal government accountable to the law. And increase awareness of the extremely harmful impacts of these ill-informed and irresponsible patterns of abuse of power. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, I hope I pronounced this right, Manij Blackburn Giles.
You got my name right. All right. My name is Manisha Blackburn Giles, and I want to tell you about my friend. I met him in November of 2024. He was living with his wife and their 1.5-year-old son in a car parked near my house, which happens to be 2 blocks from the Village Exchange Center. And I was worried for their safety. He'd been working odd jobs and had saved enough money to apply for temporary protected status, but he didn't have a stable address. I let him use mine and drove him to the lawyer who helped him with the paperwork. A few weeks later, his TPS arrived in my mailbox. Within 3 days, he got a job in construction. Within 5 weeks, he moved in with a family and rented a room. He was building the American dream. Then, on March 22nd, while working construction outside of a dispensary, he was jumped by 2 men in a completely unprovoked, racially motivated attack. They shouted slurs as they assaulted him. He got in his car and tried to flee. He called the police. When the police arrived, the men lied, claiming he tried to run them over. My friend, the victim, was charged with felony vehicular assault. 1 week later, ICE detained him at work. He had valid TPS, but they took him anyways. Now he has 3 warrants for failing to appear in court, warrants he can't answer to because he's in ICE custody, and ICE will not coordinate with law enforcement unless it serves them. Even worse, although he's eligible for a public defender, he cannot even apply because he's in ICE custody. There is no one to request the footage outside the dispensary to prove his innocence. And ICE refuses to return his phone, where his TPS login is stored. That means he can't update his immigration status, which will soon expire. They're forcing him out of compliance. This is a trap, plain and simple. And without his income, his now 2-year-old son and his spouse will be on the streets on May 1st. They have a demand for rent or compliance. And normally I would send them to the Gathering Place or Village Exchange Center, but we've already heard from them today. Jeanette Vizaguerra, respected immigrant rights leader and mother, was also taken by ICE, this time in front of her job at Target. She now sits in the same detention facility. She followed every rule, like my friend, and they are being punished for simply surviving. And now, the guy we call president openly defied the Supreme Court to return Abrego Garcia. The Supreme Court ruled it was unconstitutional, and Trump refused to return him. This is a direct attack on the rule of law. And all of that, this is being done under the guise of Christian values. But the Bible says, welcome the stranger, love your neighbor, speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. What we're experiencing is not Christianity. This is cruelty and religious drag, and no offense to drag queens. Books like Toxic Empathy, How Progressives Exploit Christian Compassion by Ali Beth Stuckey are now being used as playbooks for MAGA extremists. It tells people that empathy is dangerous and compassion is weakness. But that's not what Jesus taught. What they call toxic is actually the gospel. I must say this plainly. The law is a social contract. When those in power break it without consequence, the contract is broken. And when that happens, democracy begins to die and fascism takes root. That's where we're at right now. My friend deserves better. Jeanette deserves better. We all deserve better. The courts have spoken. The only question now is, will anyone be brave enough to do the hard thing and hold this administration accountable, even without precedent? Because if we don't do it on this issue today, right now, then there's no rule of law and there's no protections for any of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Sanders. Mary stepped out. How about Maria Washburn?
Good evening. My name is Maria Washburn, so close.
Almost.
Yeah,
Give it to me again.
Maria
Maria.
Washburn. And I have dedicated over 11 years of working in the world of wildland firefighting. Oh, sorry. That's better. Wow, that's really close to my face. My name is Maria Washburn, and I have dedicated over 11 years to the world of wildland firefighting. I've served as a volunteer firefighter, I've served as a volunteer firefighter, public information officer, fire communications specialist at the Forest Service, and as a member of a complex incident management team. Tonight, I'm here to speak about wildland firefighters and our safety. As I mentioned, I'm a rostered member of a complex incident management team, the same team that was here last summer to help manage the Alexander Mountain Fire outside of Loveland, Colorado. Incident management teams, known as IMTs, consist of specifically trained staff from federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial entities who then volunteer to perform extra duties that provide a command infrastructure during really complex incidents. These are teams of helpers that provide the safety and support needed when an incident grows beyond the scope and capacity of a local agency. There were times last summer when every single available complex management team was out on an assignment. There were 44 teams last summer. The number has now dropped to 41. As our federal workforce continues to be gutted, I'm concerned that number will continue to drop. When you drove here tonight, you probably got in a car with gas, maybe used a map app to help you navigate to get here. Maybe you texted a loved one, told them you'd be home late, or to let them know that you were en route. That gas is a logistics team. That navigation is a GIS specialist. That text message is your safety and accountability, your task force leader, your division supervisor. Those titles that I just named are all people who are part of an IMT, and their job is to keep firefighters and the communities that they are working in safe. In a letter dated on February 13th, 2024, the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, said, and I quote, "The U.S. Department of Agriculture has the largest and most sophisticated wildland firefighting workforce in the world, and I'm honored to serve and support you. I'm committed to ensuring that you have the tools and resources you need to safely and effectively carry out your mission." As we've mentioned, that was a lie. That day after that letter was dated, this administration began terminating more than 3,000 Forest Service employees, including many who support IMTs. I was fired 2 days later. I have since been reinstated due to a 45-day stay with the USDA, but that 45-day stay expires on Saturday. As of today, and I haven't been fired again yet, but as of today, the Forest Service, oh, sorry, now I'm shaking. I'm angry. As of today, the Forest Service has already lost 37% of fire qualified personnel, as of today. As we approach the fire season, the infrastructure supporting wildland firefighting is rapidly deteriorating. Firefighters do not keep themselves safe in a vacuum. They need gas for their trucks, repairs for their equipment, medical supplies for their people, meals for their crews, maps for their daily work plan. IMTs work together to ensure firefighters have the things they need to do their jobs and to be safe, so that firefighters in turn can help keep our communities and our lands healthy, safe, and resilient. In the 11 years that I've worked in this industry, things have never been less safe. Thank you for your time.
Melissa Hidalgo.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Hidalgo, again, close.
Sorry.
I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of Cobalt Abortion Fund. Cobalt is an advocacy. Thank you. Cobalt is an advocacy and policy organization focused on increasing access to abortion care through policy work, partnerships, and financial assistance for abortion seekers' care. Cobalt Abortion Fund provides direct financial assistance for the cost of abortion care and basic needs for an abortion seeker to access that care, such as travel, lodging, meal support, etc. In a post-jobs world, the need for abortion funding, especially for travel funding, has increased dramatically. In 2021, the last full year before the Dobbs decision, Cobalt Abortion Fund spent just over $200,000 in funding. Last year, we spent $2 million. This is an 840% increase in funding. We have also increased our staffing capacity from 1 full-time staff to 5 full-time staff. These efforts are all to better support abortion seekers access care, including Colorado residents and those that are forced to travel. In the past few years, with the current administration, we know that abortion care is facing increased criminalization throughout this country. For example, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, a federal district court in Alabama last month issued a pivotal opinion prohibiting the Alabama Attorney General from carrying out his threats to criminally prosecute people who help pregnant Alabamians leave the state to access abortion where it is legal. The court held that the threats violated the Yellowhammer Fund's right to free expression and their clients' right to travel. We are elated that the Yellowhammer Fund won their lawsuit, but we're really just devastated that it had to be brought forward at all. We know that health disparities are real, and reproductive health disparities and criminalization fall heaviest on communities of color. This week is Black Maternal Health Week, a national study which investigated pregnancy-related mortality among Black versus white women found that Black women have a case fatality rate 2 to 3 times higher than that of white women for 5 specific pregnancy complications, including preeclampsia, eclampsia, placental abruption, placental previa, and postpartum hemorrhage. This is why our bills making their way through the Colorado State Legislature, which shield providers and patients and ensure abortion care in the ER, are so critical. The reality of working to secure reproductive freedom for all means working in an environment where your day-to-day tasks are being further criminalized throughout the country and by the current administration. Abortion funds, such as Cobalt Abortion Fund, are filling critical healthcare gaps. We are assisting everyone we can, but even our capacity has limits. Having a strong and positive relationship with our Attorney General, Phil Weiser, is mission critical. Attorney Generals, I ask you for your continued reinforcement to protect abortion seekers, abortion providers, and those providing support for them. Thank you.
And I think our last testimonials. Patient next. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Patience Kabwasa, and it's with incredible honor that I serve as the Executive Director of Food to Power, a grassroots urban farm whose programs in food access, education and advocacy, growing food, and a budding social enterprise of diverting food scraps from our landfills and turning it into compost that feeds our soil, our plants, and our bodies, all while providing meaningful work for folks who are most impacted, is completely transforming the southeast of Colorado Springs, Colorado. So I'm here to talk about and to share the critical work at the intersection of food justice and environmental sustainability. Last year, Food to Power diverted over 400,000 pounds of fresh food and put that perfectly good and nourishing food on the tables of Colorado families, valued at $1.4 million. In 2024, we saw a 148% increase of unique individuals served from 2023. Largely, more households are under the financial stress and pressure as local pantries are closing or reducing their programs. Our composting program rediverted almost 400,000 pounds of food scraps from landfills in a community that has more trash transfer stations, the wastewater treatment facility, and tire processing facilities than anywhere else in the city. So we know that the work that we're doing to mitigate those food scraps going to the landfill not only affect food access, but it also affects air quality, soil quality, and health equity overall. The Food to Power farm harvested almost 9,000 pounds of fresh produce over 74 varieties, despite early season challenges from high winds and pests. And our organization operates 10 no-cost grocery programs, and we also deliver to 74 households. A lot of those households are seniors. Food to Power also paid over $155,000 to individuals and organizations in Southeast Colorado Springs, the area that is most of them, as Congress also targets deep cuts to the social safety net programs, like the House Agricultural Committee also being directed to cut over $230 billion over the next 9 years, cuts to the USDA, SNAP benefits, and Medicaid. These aren't just numbers. Each cut represents real people losing access to food and lost opportunities to build environmental resilience. This is a life and death issue, and people will die. Our composting collective would have created multiple benefits: diverting food waste, building soil health, creating local jobs, and tackling climate change. When our community's only commercial composting facility stopped accepting food scraps, we stepped up, we diverted those, we partnered with farmers, and we get livestock feed to our farmers so that that is even more nourishing food that is being circulated in our community. But we know that we are not alone. Organizations working on environmental justice are facing similar roadblocks. Just know that you're listening to us, and as a collective, you're gonna fight for justice for our communities because people will die. It is a life or death issue. Fresh food is a human right, and your zip code should not determine what you're able to access or what you're able to eat.
Is Mary here now?
Awesome. Hey everyone, thank you so much. I'm probably not going to go super long, so I am a person with. Is it ringing? Okay, so I thought I heard.
You're doing great.
Feedback. Okay. So I'm a person with disabilities, and so there's a few things I help advocate for housing. And with our cuts, it's been really difficult. Oh,
let me get you a different one.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Sorry. So yeah, with our cuts, it's been really difficult. With the freeze that happened in late January, I'm a person who relies on housing, but I also help house. And okay.
You got this.
It's just difficult to see that not only does it impact me, but I'm also trying to look for work within housing. And it's a lot harder to find a job because the funding has been cut so severely. So not only is it affecting me personally as a person who relies on housing, hence the emotions, but also my job outlook has really been much more impacted. So these emotions are coming from a place of care and not a place of nervousness for speaking. So just to make that clear, because I'm not a shy person. Also, in addition, the Social Security Administration has been absolutely ravaged by DOGE. You can't even get in there now. They're basically, hollering at you. Do you have an appointment? Well, if you don't have an appointment, you might as well go the other way. Well, as a person with disabilities, their forms are not accessible half the time. What are you going to do when you get a form in the mail that you have to fill out before your disability benefits are cut? Well, you can't get in, can't get on the phones, nobody answers. It's a 5-hour wait, and if anybody does answer, they're bound to hang up on you. So we need to figure out a solution because these are our taxpayer dollars that we paid into the system. To get these benefits. And I also would say, smash the cap and have everybody pay their share. And let's reopen the government, because if I can't find something in housing, you're bound to see me at the Social Security office. Anyway, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this opportunity to speak. Forgive me for the emotions, but I really appreciate the opportunity. Housing is dear to me, and so are all of these other benefit programs. So I'm going to pass the mic on, and again, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have one more testimonial before I get to some of the questions?
Hello, my name is Aaron Doganis, and I am the owner of a local, I founded a local composting organization here in Colorado, as well as directing a local card shop. Can you hear me?
Now, he's been sitting in the front row practicing. So you got this. Be patient. Go ahead.
Hello, so my name is Aaron Doganis. I help found a local composting organization here in Colorado, as well as directing a local card show that donates almost 10% of all of our profits to sustainability efforts. I'm deeply interested in public service work, policies, and markets. Currently, I'm a high school student here in STEM School, Helen's Ranch Charter School. I have not taken sides today on our political wars, but I'm making a statement. Instead of taking a statement from my personal experience, I would like to bring up concerns for members of my generation.
Hey, Eric, slow down.
Okay, thank you. Today, I would like to first talk about our economy, which is short-term, then our climate, long-term. My first concern is concerns regarding the current outrageous turbulence in the markets. The major cause seems to be the widespread and rapid policy shifts. Markets are roiling. Dozens of executive orders, tariff changes, tariff pauses, tariff increases and decreases have been enacted in the blink of an eye with the headline and legal excuse of a national emergency. But if it were truly an emergency, then what would constitute them the right to take it right back? And really, I don't think putting tariffs on an island with penguins is a national emergency. Everyone is guessing, but it appears that our goal with these tariffs is one of two things. A, increasing leverage on foreign affairs, or B, moving manufacturing back to America. As for foreign affairs, I don't see the big emergency. Is our time today more poignant than during Washington's presidency, when our republic was weaker, our position was more targeted, but our president left tariff policy to Congress? As for my second point, trying to move from service-based industry to a manufacturing-based economy is just a fool's errand. It's like howling at the moon, less about accomplishing anything than signaling to your pack. Enough with political performance above a good policy. Let's turn to my second topic, the environment. My generation cares deeply about our climate. If we allow our federal government to reverse decades of climate efforts, weaken environmental regulations for the short-term gains, we almost guarantee long-term negative consequences of climate change. We fear that with deforestation, population growth, huge energy demands for AI, our planet will no longer be able to regulate itself fast enough to mitigate the damage we inflict on it. Stopping emissions now is much more affordable than solving the mess later. And some policies may not even be reversible. Animals we used to love, such as the fierce Atlas bear, the peaceful eastern elk, the large Syrian elephant, and even the very Californian grizzly bear on the Californian flag, have all gone extinct. Not just us, not just our children and our grandchildren, but their children and their grandchildren, and all future generations to come, all these amazing species will forever remain strangers and unknowns, and we will never really fathom how much poorer our planet has become, all because of the unethical and possibly unconstitutional actions of our federal government. Freezing already committed funding, controlling state choices, exempting coal plants from regulations, and defunding climate research programs. I strongly believe that whether we support or oppose the current administration, it is important to speak up when it flouts the law or constitution. Because at the end of the day, our constitution is what makes us, the US. Now, I have a couple questions for the group. First, what should our priorities be? We need focus. What should our priorities be? We need more focus. A scattershot approach is weak and ineffective. Second, how can we get a more pointed and unified message out? How can we hold the administration accountable without alienating the president and the country? We need a focused message, not 1,000 negative headlines, nothing standing out above each other. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for segueing us beautifully to the question and answer part. I'm going to ask my colleagues questions, and whoever wants to take a shot at this one. How do we have a focused message that picks out, and I'm fond of this metaphor, if you don't mind using it, the signal from all the noise? Who wants to take it?
So the question was, how do we have a focused message to get through all the noise? Is that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of noise out there. We don't want to take every piece of bait. How do we make sure that we're focusing on what matters and protecting people where we've heard some of the harms that are happening?
Yeah, look, first off, thank you to everyone who gave your testimony. It's fantastic. And young man, thank you so much for your comments. Look, I think part of the answer, there are several answers to that question. There's not one, I don't think. But one of the answers is doing what we're doing right now, listening, having a comment, hearing from you, you telling us what it's important. To be sure, we have our own personal experiences. We are just like you. We're your neighbors. We shop at the grocery stores. What's it called? King Super or something? Yep, y'all, they stop at King Supers like you. Yeah, I shop at Albertsons, but the point is we're just like you, right? And so we have our experiences, but we represent you. And so hearing from you about what you consider important, what you consider to be the primary issues of import are important to us. And so that's one of the ways in which we can kind of cut through the noise, so to speak, and focus on what's important to you. But separate and apart from that, but also related is understanding you don't have to talk about everything, right? Find a focus, find something that is of particular importance to you, and have conversations around that. I can't speak to some of the issues that have been raised today. I don't have the knowledge or the experience. Others do, and they will likewise likely chime in and be able to address those issues. But those things that I have specific areas of confidence in that I can speak on, that's what I will focus my efforts on and my attentions on. Understanding that I have 22 other Democratic attorneys general who also have expertise in areas where I may not have those. And so while I brought up, for example, while I am leading an election-based lawsuit, we have others who are leading other types of lawsuits, whether they relate to environmental issues, whether they relate to administrative issues, you name it. And that's one of the great parts of having a coalition of attorneys general who work together so that we can supplement and complement each other in the terms of what the work that we do.
Let me turn the question around for you also, which picks up on what A.G. Ford said. Speak about what authentically moves and touches you. Others will feel the power of your authentic concern, and it will move them. I did one of these town halls with Congresswoman from Denver, and they had one of these fancy voting systems where people voted on the questions. This was the number one question. It came to us from 3 people. Is Lynn, Sarah, or Brian here by any chance? Lynn, Sarah, or Brian? All right, you guys submitted this question, and several others did. I'll give you Brian's version. After watching this president disregard a Supreme Court ruling in the Garcia deportation, and after seeing a failure to honor the rule of law, what can we do as the public to defend the rule of law?
Start with how do we save democracy? A nice, easy one. Well, let me say a couple different things. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Even in the midst of all this craziness and nonsense and real undermining our democracy, at least from my perspective, and I know a lot of us share this viewpoint, for the most part, I think our system has been working the way it has been intended to work. And I'll get to the specifics of this question in a second. But for the most part, our system, our justice system, our courts have been working the way that they're supposed to work. The president is doing something we find unlawful. Our teams bring cases. Our lawyers go to court. Department of Justice shows up, argues those. The judge hears those, issues rulings. And for the most part, in the dozen plus cases that we've brought as attorney generals, the department and the administration has been responding accordingly. We challenged the cuts to the NIH funding freeze. And we went to court and we won. We got an injunction. And for the most part, those grants were turned back on. We had to go back to court to fill in some of the voids where we found some inequities in the way that they were turning back on the funding. But for the most part, it has worked. And it has given me confidence as a lifelong public servant and a former Department of Justice employee, confidence in our system. But my own confidence has been tested in this last week. because we've seen rhetoric in the past of the president and the vice president talking about their authority. This is the first time in this week, in the days past, where I think we're really getting to the precipice of a constitutional crisis. And I don't say that lightly. And you know, I started my career as an Army JAG lawyer. I served in the Department of Justice for many years. I believe in our government and our system of the right vehicle to address some of the challenges that we're facing. But what we are facing right now is uniquely scary. And I don't have all the answers. I do not know what it means for a president to blatantly disregard what a court says. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but we might be there tomorrow or next week. But what I will say is that part of the reason so many of our lawsuits have brought challenges not only against the presidency, but so many other departments within the administration. It is one thing for the president, who has a lot of power, and rightly so, to ignore a court order. It is another thing for the Secretary of Interior or Commerce, what have you, to ignore that and to be held subject to criminal or civil liability. What you all need to continue to do is tell the truth. And talk about messaging and branding and how we mobilize. The truth needs to mean something again. And I think it is incumbent upon us to continue to tell the truth to each other and to not accept this as normal and to hold the people that you elect at every level accountable for fighting this fight.
And I want to add that the public has power. We, the people, and our voice has power. And you saw that with the tariffs. And this issue about the unlawful deportation and due process and whether or not this president follows court orders, it's an 80-20 issue on the side of the Constitution. I'm going to bet on the Constitution coming out of this effort.
Can I add, though, one of the things that General Brown said earlier, though, is that we know that they are lying every single day. And it's so blatant, they'll say there's a crowd of 5,000 people in Colorado at a resistance thing, and they'll just say they're paid Democratic operatives, right? We know
It's 8,000 for the record, by the way.
But I guess...
And I went broke.
I guess my feeling is what we need people to do is to keep showing up every time there's an opportunity to show up. And if you can't show up because you're working 2 jobs, then find somebody who can, or spend the money that you can, or use your neighborhood to get together. And one of the AGs, the Vermont AG, says that their church has a protest rally every Friday, no matter what, just to have a protest. And so I think that that's the key when we talk about we the people. We're all busy, we all have a lot happening, but we have to take every single opportunity to show up.
Next question. How can Colorado and other states protect refugees, particularly from Afghanistan, who are here after our government helped them get here because they might have helped the U.S.? For example, I was the foster parent of an unaccompanied refugee minor from Afghanistan who was in the U.S. since the fall of Kabul, and his family arrived last year after they were in a refugee center in Qatar for 2 years. How do we protect people like this? If they return to Afghanistan, they're not going to survive. All right, I'll take it. We have to protect the integrity of our immigration system, follow rules that treat everybody fairly and legally. This individual came here like my family came here as refugees. We in Colorado are welcoming. We have organizations like the Village Exchange Center. We fight to make sure we keep that culture, we keep these rules, and people like the individuals talked about in this question are treated the right way, and they will have a bright future in the United States of America.
Can I add one?
Please.
I think audiences like this need to also show up with them. You know, we are seeing people be kidnapped off the streets. We are seeing people, you know, there was a gentleman day before yesterday, I think, who was literally going to his appointment to get further legal status and was arrested there. The reason that we know about that is that he wasn't by himself. He wasn't by himself. And being there with them, and particularly when you have legal status, and you have a louder voice than someone who's vulnerable, go with them. If you have a moment to volunteer for some of the organizations you hear about. Go with them. It'll have so much more impact if they have support and someone who can document if something happens to them, who can help them advocate for them if they need help. But just being present, and I know not everybody can do that, but some of you can. And I would just encourage all of us to think about that opportunity.
Yeah, let me add to that because it's a good answer. Yeah, it might be hard to conceive of this happening, what I'm about to say, but it will. It's one thing to show up right now where all the attention is on it. A lot of people are up in arms, gung-ho about protecting the rights of you name it. I'm just going to draw an analogy. I'm not trying to change the subject, but I'm going to draw an analogy to when George Floyd was murdered. Everybody showed up. Everybody was there. We filled this auditorium with folks who want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and expanding opportunities for everybody. But the fervor died down, and everybody disappeared. So what I will say is right now, certainly show up. But the fervor will die down on this issue. Like it does in everything else. You're going with your lives. Things are going to preoccupy you. You're going to have a focus on something else. The fervor will die down, but be there then. Continue to show up. Because if there's nothing that we haven't learned, if there's anything we learned, these guys are patient. They will take their time to undo your rights. Don't take my word for it. They just undid 50 years of rights in the abortion context. They will take their time to undermine the rights of people who are present in this country. So be there right now, but be there when the fervor dies down, because it will.
Someone asks, can you talk about the SAVE Act and its impact on people who have had a name change, such as women who take their spouse's name after they get married? Who wants to take this one?
I'll admit that's not my expertise.
I'll talk about it. This SAVE Act is a very dangerous and illegal intrusion on state sovereignty, trying to tell us how to conduct our elections. We've all signed a letter calling on Congress not to pass it. I can say confidently we'll all be suing if they do. Are Donna or Bud here, by any chance? Donna or Bud submitted questions about what's happening with both our public lands and national parks, as well as efforts to undermine state and local protections to address climate change and protect our land, air, and water. What can we do to defend our land, air, and water and address climate change in the face of this administration?
Yeah, let me start with that one. Let me back up to the last question, because I think I said that they are patient. They're also persistent, right? That's yet another effort at undermining the fundamental right to vote, right? Looking for opportunities to make it more difficult for you to exercise the franchise of voting. This SAVE Act that's talking about come up with a birth certificate or a passport before you can actually vote. And so keep that in mind as well, that just because we defeat one iteration of the attack doesn't mean that we're done. Don't get complacent. Don't get comfortable, because when we do that, again, we end up losing rights. So I want to kind of back up to that one before I speak on this next one. And I think Colorado, Nevada, certainly, I think actually all four of us have this in common in terms of the importance the environment plays in our particular states. Look, I live in a desert. By the way, I should back up and tell you, one of the main reasons I wanted to be here is because three of us share constituents in common. You might not know this, but my former Nevada constituents, your former Washington constituents, your current Colorado constituents are Willis and Sonia Walker out there. Raise your hand, y'all. Raise your hand. Yeah. Up in there. That's my people out there. Yeah. They can attest what I'm about to say. We lived in a desert out there. Conserving water and understanding the importance of the environmental impacts of drought, things of that sort, are of paramount import. And so what we did legislatively in our own states was to understand that the federal government would waffle back and forth, and we would pass, we would advocate for and pass things internally in our state to protect our natural resources. Now, I know that that's not responsive necessarily to the federal side of things, but some of the things you have to do is use belt and suspenders. Have protections in place at the state level when the federal government decides to waffle back and forth. I know in Seattle and I know in Colorado, again, places where the Walkers have lived, you have also had to engage in your own conversations around the ways in which you're going to protect the environment, even when you have a federal administration that doesn't have the same level of concern about what the impacts are on the policies they're making. Comparably in Hawaii, I suspect. So that's one of the suggestions I would make. Continue to advocate. I heard someone with their questions talk about passing a law at the state level related to some of the events that they were bringing up in their testimony. Comparably on the environmental issues, I would suggest you go do the same at the local level.
I'll just add, we're going to sue on this one. I mean, there was a series of executive orders last week. First of all the executive order titles are so stupid. I get that. But it was about protecting the big, beautiful coal industry and taking away funding from all of our states and removing electrical grid. Like, it's all destructive and harmful and illegal. And so on a number of these issues, I anticipate a lot more aggressive action from the states.
And just to pull the point through, adding another constitutional provision, we have a 10th Amendment that protects the rights of states to manage our energy systems, to protect our land, air, and water, and they can't tell us what to do. Now that the Trump administration has eliminated the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and has attacked the independence of the Federal Trade Commission, how will state AG's offices respond to fill in this vacuum?
So last week, 2 weeks ago, I was in Washington, D.C. at the American Bar Association antitrust meeting, and I told them they should have invited Phil, because Phil, among the attorneys general, is an antitrust guru. I told you guys have a gem right here. Absolutely. But one of the things that I can guarantee you is that states, certainly the 22 Democratic attorneys general, but particularly even in the bipartisan level, a lot of times we get together on the antitrust side of things to protect our relative constituencies. And that's all the more it's all the more important for us to do that now, and we continue to do that in the face of a federal government that decides to back off of certain actions. And so just be on the lookout for that as well.
This next question has been voted number 2, had we used that system. It's from Tim. I'm not sure if Tim's here. Tim asks, do we know what DOJ did to access federal databases, including sensitive information like bank accounts and Social Security numbers from the Treasury Department? How can we address this damage and prevent them from undermining our privacy?
Well, I would say yes and no. I don't think anybody, including the president, has a full accounting for what DOJ was doing, is doing, and will do. He has been Elon has been operating with a level of independence and authority for an unelected, unappointed, unvetted individual and his whole team. Yeah, be throwing the billionaire. But it's not only him, his entire team did not go through the background checks that federal employees have to go through. And so I think the answer is no, we don't have a full accounting of that. We do know some of the work that they've been doing because of the damage that's been done from it, because of the shutting off of these systems, because of the slowdowns people have had of accessing their benefits, like veterans benefits and Social Security benefits and the like. We do know some of the work because of the illegal firings that resulted after they come into an agency that we had to stand up and oppose. But this has not gotten the full accounting that it needs, and it may not ever, because of, in part, for what AG Ford was talking about. 2 months ago, DOGE was the #1 complaints that all of us were getting in our offices from our constituencies. But that dissipated because of the next crisis, the next illegal thing that we have to respond to. And I think we need to bring back attention to some of these issues. And we continue to have lawsuits against Elon Musk. But it is incredibly dangerous to have someone like him, or frankly anybody else that hasn't gone through some of the channels and tests that you need to have to be in federal government to operate the things that are getting at your privacy and your pocketbooks and your identity. And I think the damage that's going to come from them is going to continue we're going to continue to see those results in the days and months and maybe years ahead, unless we continue to demand answers from the government and continue to litigate, not only as AGs, but the people that are impacted by these decisions.
We did bring a case involving the Treasury Department where there was access to a sensitive database for Social Security numbers and bank accounts, and we did successfully stop this privacy invasion from happening in that one instance. A.G. Brown's right. It's a broader challenge, and part of the challenge for us is how do we get information? When people like you talk about what you're seeing, it helps give us information to be able to act on. Whistleblowers are stepping forward, talking about some of the things that DOGE is doing. We'll be keeping our eyes on it. This is a question that came up before. You adverted to it, A.G. Brown. It's about how do we get trustworthy information out there. Norm, I'm not sure if you're here, Norm said, how do we better communicate facts to people that make sure we cut through all the noise? One example is the SAVE Act, which just passed, and people may not know about it. How do we better disseminate information?
I think he's pointing at me. Well, I will say that in my state, the number of calls that my office gets that aren't complaining about me, but are asking questions or complaining about the federal government they're exponential. One of the things that we're trying to do is more regularly talk to people. We're invited to go to community centers. We're invited to go to different faith communities to just talk about what these things mean and what people need to look out for. And I think you can expect all of us to continue to be active to try and keep bringing these messages home so that you can share them with one another. I think part of the problem, I think, is that there is so much that we need to talk about and so much that we need to do. One of the things that we're getting better at as a group is figuring out which of us leads best on which thing. As A.G. Ford was saying, who's got the expertise where. And I think that as we go forward, we need to continue sort of that work on how we work together to disseminate that information. But you guys might think differently. I don't know.
Well, I think one of the things that, lies spread much faster than truth. And we are not going to be able to stop that ecosystem of dishonesty that is existing in this country right now. We, as AGs, and you in your own capacity, are not going to be able to change the BS programming coming from Fox News, and on the spectrum, if Fox is better than a lot of the news sources that many people are listening to right now. But I think the thing that we can do might be the single hardest thing, is that we need to continue to talk to people that don't agree with us. We need to continue to engage. And I say it's the hardest thing because it is something that I struggle with. When I hear nonsense, when I see it, you know, my initial reaction is not to engage, and not everybody wants to or has the time and the energy. But it is that power of community that we cannot lose, and we will lose it if we only talk to each other or people who only believe the same things that we believe. You need to be able to push back when you have a neighbor, a coworker, a family member that says, well, you know, Donald Trump can deport who he wants because he's the president and that's what the Constitution says. You need to say that's bullshit, you know? And that it helps. I really do think it helps. I continue to believe in our communities. I continue to believe in this country because I believe those efforts can make a difference. But I think so much of our natural tendency is to try to fight the biggest fight. Don't worry about Fox News right now. You cannot change their programming. I cannot change their programming. But I can have an open and honest conversation with my neighbor who I lived next to for 6 years before I heard that he was a Republican. But he voted for me, so I'll take it. But you know, we have conversations about these things as we got to know each other better, and I think we need to lean in that a little bit more than we might feel comfortable sometimes.
You know, I just want to add and co-sign everything Nick just said. My mama used to say, and still says every once in a while, tell the truth, shame the devil. That's what you should say, you know, all the time. You know, call out the liars and tell the truth, and you shame the devil. That's a little thing she say all the time. But I think there are one other answer I want to provide, and then an example of what Nick is talking about. I was talking to the media earlier. A reporter was asking me this question about truth. And I said to him, look, we just got to continue to tell the truth. We know we got a bunch of people liars out there, and we have to combat that with telling the truth about it. And I said to him, frankly, part of that's your responsibility. I told the media that. I told him, I said, part of that is I'm not trying to co-opt the media to my side. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is that you have to call out a lie when it's a lie because you have a wider audience than I do, right? And so, you know, we need to continue to kind of hold every entity kind of like accountable for telling the truth in these issues. Now, Fox News might be, as he said, might be a little different, but, you know, still having these conversations. But here's what I wanted to say. I'm not talking about black and white. I'm not talking about things that there's an objective truth and an objective failure or objective lie. Look, some people argue about the sky is blue. Let me tell you a true story. Me and my wife were sitting in the backyard one day after work, looking at each other we were just this way, right? I was looking at her, and I looked up in the back, and it was sunset. And I said, oh, that's a beautiful red sunset. And Sonia, my wife said, boy, that's yellow. and I said, I know my colors. That's red, and it's a beautiful red sunset. We were looking at each other, and then something, at a couple of back and forths to that, something told me, Nick, to just turn around real quickly and see what she was looking at. And lo and behold, the sunset from her perspective was yellow. And I said to myself, there's a lesson there. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own perspective and the way we look at things that we don't recognize that maybe another perspective out there that is just as valid, right? And in this instance, the sky was big enough for both of us to be right and both to be wrong. And that's an important part of the conversation that Nick is talking about. Having conversations with folks who have a different perspective than you can help you maybe see different things from a different perspective that you wouldn't have otherwise viewed it from. And I think that's an important part of the way we combat this misinformation and disinformation. Again, I'm not talking about objective truths like the sky is blue, although the sky was both red and yellow at the same time. But you get the point I'm making.
So we have the last question, which is a fitting last question. I'm going to ask each of you to answer this question and share your final thoughts. The question is, how do we, the people, support due process, free speech, protect Social Security and health care, our privacy rights, and more? We need your guidance.
Nick, you go first on that one, brother.
You go first, Nick.
I'm going to say ditto.
How much time we got?
2 minutes.
All right. Well, you said we had 3 minutes for intros, and my brother over here went for like 10, but it's all right.
Wow. I was preaching on y'all.
I mean, we've touched on what I think is the answer to all these things. And let me first just get back to what I said at the beginning. This is a scary moment for everyone, for myself included. I have fear in many aspects about where we are as a country, where Washington is as a state, and I think, and I say that from a position of power and authority and an ability to have an impact. And I think about all the people in my community who have none of those things, and the fear and trepidation that they are feeling, and it is real. But I am so encouraged in my work, because every day I get to come and do things that have an impact on people's lives. And I am encouraged by the results that all of us have been having. We've been winning our cases. We've brought in, 10 to 15 different cases, depending on the state and the AG, and we've been winning. We've been getting results, but it is not enough. It is not enough. And I as a almost lifelong government employee, government is not the solution for all of the things that we are facing. It was never intended to be, nor should it be. What is the solution is what we are seeing in this room, and what you will do when you go back to your communities, when you show up in your personal and professional spaces. The solution to our savior of our country is not lawyers in AG's offices. It is you. It is the people of this country. And I believe we will get past these next 3 years. And it'll only be 3 years. I believe that. And I believe we'll get past it, but there will be damage done that we will have to continue to lean in and work on. And it'll be showing up and talking to each other. It'll be electing good people into good offices. It'll be supporting the groups that you've heard from today and the ones that you know about in your state. It'll be about doing all of those little things. Showing up for each other, telling the truth, and not giving up.
I probably sound like a bit of a broken record, but I believe that we have to lift each other up. We can't talk about things. We can't just bitch and moan about things. We can't just have legal arguments with one another. If you know somebody whose child is having difficulty reading, we need to lift them up by helping their child learn to read. We've got to go very, very basic. And when we do that, when we lift each other, people see it, they experience it, and they understand that this person cares for me. And the ideology, it's not about their ideology, it's about who they are, what their integrity is, what their morals are, and that's how we sway people. We have to lift each other up every day in different ways, small and big.
I'll try not to go 10 minutes on this one, Nick, but I do have an answer, and then kind of 2 ends. Look, if you open up my Twitter page, it says by design. My name is Aaron Ford. I am a husband, a father, and then Attorney General, like in that order, on purpose and by design. I say that because a lot of people who get in these positions, this is their identity. This is who they are. For me, this is not who I am. This is what I do. Right? I'm a father, I'm a husband, and then I'm Attorney General. And what's important about that is that it frees me up to be, in this instance, Nick, unafraid. So I'm not afraid of, for example, not winning re-election. I'm not afraid of not winning the next election. I'm not afraid what comes next because I recognize what my priorities are. And so that frees me up to act in a way that is bold, that is in the face of opposition, that is just, that is really caring for the people who elected to be here. And the reason why I share that with you is because that's what I think most of us need to do, is to find that motivation that allows you to be that bold and to be that aggressive on fighting for these things that are so important. And I apologize in advance for the half a dozen folks who have already heard this story. But my ultimate motivation behind all of this, because this ain't an easy job, y'all. Everybody thinks that because we ran for office that we got appointed even, because it don't matter, because you get this too. They think that you forfeited your right to be treated like a human, that they can call you anything, They can treat you, they can mistreat you. I get called everything but a child of God, right? And it is not a fun existence sometimes. And sometimes I want to throw the towel in and be like, I'm done. But I find a motivation in recognizing, and here's a story that half a dozen of you have heard. My motivation is in my fourth great grandfather. My fourth great grandfather was a guy named William Berry. William Berry was born in Fordyce, Arkansas in the 1800s, born during slave times. And so he was enslaved at the time he was born. And the oral history and the written history of my family is such that one day they put him on the auction block, about like this, on the stage, probably like this, Phil. They put him on the auction block to sell him. And I'm reminded of Kendrick Lamar. He says, I got loyalty and royalty inside my DNA. William Berry said, I have dignity and humanity inside my DNA. And the word has it, the oral history of my family says, no, you're not selling me. I'm married with children. I'm a man. I'm not a chattel. I'm not cattle. You will not separate me from my folks. I have humanity, dignity. You will not sell me. So they didn't sell him, y'all. They killed him right there on the auction block. And then they sold 3 of his sons to a slaver in Texas. That's how I hail from Texas, because originally, that's where I come from. But I use it as a story, as motivation, because I stand 4 generations after William Berry, standing up for not only my own humanity and my own dignity, but yours as well. And that's what's important about these positions. That's what's important about understanding the people on this stage who are standing up every single day fighting for your humanity and your dignity. Get out there, find your, that's my motivation, find your motivation, and then use that motivation to continue to push forward, because that's how we see through these next 3.5 years.
And I'll close just on a note from Scripture to follow my brother over here, which says, you don't have the obligation to repair the world by yourself, but you're not free to desist from doing your part. Everyone here has a part to play in how we repair our world. I thank you all for showing up, for your leadership. Can we thank our great guests? Thank you. Thank you very much.